the high officials that we have here today, and my greatest respects to you people that have come out here to see what we're talking about and see what we're doing and what we're trying to do. I think that you would like to hear perhaps what went on in my mind for the last 30 days. Well, I might not can tell you very clearly because I'm not sure myself. But to begin with, 30 days ago, I was very busy getting Emmett to go away on a trip that I thought would be the highlight of his 14 years. And I had taken every precaution to make it his nicest trip ever. And before his 2 weeks were up, at the end of the first week, I was supposed to have gone away myself. But on Tuesday of that week, I just got so tired until I couldn't go away. I had made every preparation to leave, but suddenly I just gave out. I didn't have any strength. And as the week neared the end, I started thinking, I said, well, maybe I don't think Emmett's going to stay the entire 2 weeks. I said he'd be so happy if he put the key in the door Friday, Saturday, or Sunday, and I was sitting here. So I just decided that I wouldn't take a vacation, or if I would, it would be the following week. And on that Saturday, or rather that Sunday morning before day, my baby was taken from his uncle's home and my aunt's home. And I found out about it 9:30 Sunday morning. I was in bed. I got up, called my mother, and I got the news because I had every decision I had ever made or every crack that I had ever been in, it took her to get me out of it. And I took that one to Mama, too, because I didn't know what to do. Mother told me to come right over, and she would start making calls. And I got over there as quickly as I could make it, and that wasn't very long. When I got there, I saw that Mother wasn't going to be able to do this for me. She was getting weaker by the minute, and it seemed that her strength was flowing into me. She had called Mr. Moody, and Mr. Moody had came and stood by us and told us what to do and how, or rather who to go to get something done. That was the NAACP. They in turn sent me to Attorney Huff, and that's why I'm with Attorney Huff today. Well, after we found out that he was missing, we went through the strain of that for 3.5 days. And I asked God, I said, God, please let something happen. Don't let me go out like this forever because I can't stand it. I'm not bitter against any race. I'm not even particularly bitter towards the men that did this thing. Because I know that if they had known what they were doing, they would not have done it. And I wouldn't say that it was God's will that it happened, but he had a reason for letting it happen. I was smug. I was content. I was in 6 rooms. I had a car. I had a kid. Nobody bothered us, and I had a good job. I thought it was sufficient to mind my own business. I didn't realize that everything was my business, that the way the people are treated all over the earth was my business. Now I know it. And I want to say that I feel that Emmett was more or less lone to me, that perhaps I wasn't his mother in the sense that other women are mothers to their children. But I appreciate the 14 years that we spent together. It was a joy watching the unfolding of his mind and the development of his body. And I don't regret a minute of the time that we spent together. I'm just sorry that it was so short. Because if I had known that we were going to be separated so quickly, I probably would have done the wrong thing trying to do the right thing. But I feel like that I did the very best that I could, and I don't have any regrets for any time that we spent together. And I want you all to support this wonderful organization because they alone can get laws on the books that will stop this thing that has been happening. And unless we can get enforceable laws, we might as well just forget everything.
The white civilization of Mississippi and the democracy of the United States goes on trial. I understand that some of the people in Mississippi, the white people, who don't like the NAACP, and of course they don't like me, I understand that they are horrified because I called it a lynching. One of the newspapers in Jackson had the Associated Press call me up, especially for them, to ask me about a lynching and how did I define it and why I didn't define a murder in New York as a lynching. And they have gone to all this trouble to develop anger because of a statement that Mississippi was determined to maintain white supremacy even if it had to murder children. I said it, and I stand on it, and I say it again. Mississippi is very near the bottom of the states in the 48 states. Name practically any category you wish of public service, of government, of progress and advancement, and you'll find that Mississippi is 46th, 47th, or 48th among the states. Accounts of election meeting is this. A candidate for governor got up and said, "Negra." And the people out in the audience says, "Don't call them that, call them niggers. What they are, call them niggers." And then the speaker thereafter said, "Well, niggers." And then he went on and ranted and raved for an hour and 10 minutes. And the United States Senator from Mississippi, they call him officially the Honorable. That's official title. The Honorable James O. Eastland makes a speech in which he calls for all whites up and all Negroes down. Only he didn't say Negroes. In which he called for war on the NAACP to drive it out of Mississippi, for keeping the Negroes from voting in the state of Mississippi. Let us run our state like we want to run it without any outside interference. So last May, Reverend George W. Lee was killed in Belzoni. You remember that. You saw the pictures of him with his jaw shot away. And where the sheriff said, well, maybe he wasn't shot. Maybe that lead is lead filling from his teeth. You remember that. Now, I tell you about Belzoni. It's a town of about 4,000 people. I was down there, of whom 2,800 are Negroes. And if they had the vote in Belzoni, that sheriff would either have found the murderer by now or he wouldn't be sheriff anymore.
This is Peter Hackus at the courthouse in Sumner, Mississippi. Not since the Tallahatchie River flooded some 20 or 30 years ago have the townspeople had more to talk about than this trial going on now inside the courtroom. Every available seat is occupied in the courtroom of this 45-year-old courthouse, including a few areas where seats weren't provided. It's on the tip of everyone's tongue. The two defendants are generally known throughout the community, and a great deal may lie in the decision.
To his house on August the 28th and took the boy away. Old Mose said he never saw the boy alive again. The highlight of the trial so far has been the dramatic testimony of Uncle Mose Wright. He testified that the two men on trial came to his house on the night of August the 28th and took the Till boy away, and that he never saw the boy alive again.
It's hot here in Mississippi, Doug, both inside and outside the courtroom. 90 degrees and above is what we've registered this morning. That's the story from Sumner, Mississippi. Now back to Doug Edwards in New York. Never has this quiet little cotton-growing community of Mississippi seen so much publicity and so much excitement as in the past few days as this trial begins to unfold. Nearly 200 of the town's 500 or 600 residents have packed into the courthouse to hear the day's proceedings as the first day of testimony opens. Outside, around the courthouse, little knots of people are waiting. They had tried to get in. The judge ruled that nobody is to go in unless he has a seat because of a tremendous fire hazard. There is no word yet as to those who couldn't find seats inside the courtroom are waiting outside for word as the trial proceeds. The judge told me today he had received 20 or 25 letters himself many of them praising him for his participation in the trial, but he has received a few threatening letters, most of them from considerably distant points.
I can't understand how a civilized mother could put a dead body of a child on public display.
Cause notoriety, and which is greater than the crime.
I think about the same thing that my friend does.
So intense has the interest been in this trial, the sheriff told me today he had his telephone disconnected last night because he just couldn't get
Food today, maybe by noon.
You mean the state's case?
State's keys, yeah. But as far as the defendant's concerned, we don't have any idea what they'll introduce, or how long it'll take to put on their case.
Do you have anything new or startling up your sleeves we haven't discovered as yet?
No.
If we did, I don't believe this would be the proper place to tell it.
Thanks very much, gentlemen. Mr. Breland, it looks like you're just about to wind up your side of the case. You think it's going to take more than a couple of hours?
In my opinion, after we begin putting on the proof, it'll take about an hour.
And what has been the basis of your defense thus far?
Our main defense is, of course, that the dead body taken from Tallahatchie River is not shown to be that of Emmett Till. The witnesses best qualified to testify as to the identity of the body taken from Tallahatchie River all are positive that this body taken from the river could not be identified positively as any particular person, though they were members of their own family. There is no direct evidence that these defendants killed Emmett Till. This is shown, if shown at all, by circumstances. And under the law, of course, all circumstances not shown are presumed to be favorable to the defendant. In other words, the state must show that from this proof that they committed this crime to the exclusion of other reasonable hypotheses. Shown by the evidence of the warrant evidence.
Mr. Breland, assuming it goes to the jury today, are you expecting a quick decision?
Well, of course, I would not like to predict that. We feel confident, however, under the proof as it now stands, that the jury should acquit.
Let's take it one step further. Assuming there is an acquittal, what will be the legal processes connected with the kidnap part of this case?
Of course, the defendants are ready for trial. But we have only a 3-week term of the court, and this is the last week of the court. It would be necessary to have new juries subpoenaed and impounded. And it's doubtful whether the court would take that case up at this term of the court.
Here's an example of the type of letters that I'm receiving daily.
About how many have you received so far, Sheriff?
Oh, around 300.
And what is the general feeling of people that write you?
Well, about 15 to 1 are threatening, but I received a few letters that congratulate me on the way I've handled the case.
Do you plan to do anything about these threatening letters, turn them over to the FBI, or follow through in any way?
I don't think so, because I have received several letters saying that the FBI knew all about it and wouldn't do anything about it, so I don't plan to fool with it.
Do you think this is an organized campaign against you?
I do not. I just think it's a bunch of crack brains.
Mr. Smith, we're about ready to wind things up here very shortly. Could you give us an outline of your side of the case so far?
Yes, I think I can. We have proved by 2 or 3 witnesses that the body found in Tallahatchie River was that of Emmett Till. We proved that the body had the ring on the finger, which was a ring that his father had overseas and was sent to his mother, and that ring was on the body. We have proved that we have definitely identified him by 3 witnesses, and we have no doubts whatsoever that the body found is that of Emmett Till. We have proved that the gentleman charged with the crime was seen with him both that night and later in the morning of Sunday, August 28th. And we feel that we've proved the case sufficient to warrant a jury to convict him of murder.
Mr. Smith, how long do you think it'll be before the case gets to the jury?
I doubt if it'll get to him before noon today, but I think it will get to him by that time.
Mr. Smith, what would you say are the strong points of the state's case?
I would say the strongest point, and the thing that the defendant is going to have to disprove more than anything else, is the fact that the body found in the river had on the ring that has been definitely identified as the ring of Emmett Till. A ring that his father sent his mother was sent to his mother from overseas after his father was killed in the service.
Have the defendants been placed near the scene of the crime?
No, they hadn't been placed, well, I'll have to qualify that. They have been placed with the deceased, but the scene of the crime has not been proven. We do not know where the scene of the crime was.
What about the witnesses the state apparently would like to put on the stand that are not here?
Well, they're just not here, that's all.
There are some men that you would like to question and possibly put on the stand who are not available, is that right?
Definitely, and we've used every resource we know for days and days to get them here, but they are just not here.
Have there been some reluctant witnesses?
There have been 2 or 3 that have had very convenient memories.
And let me ask you this, what is your personal belief in this case? Do you believe that these men are guilty?
I believe they are guilty. Definitely.
How long am I going to be here today?
How long do you expect to be here in Sumner?
Starting.
Mrs. Bradley, could you tell me what the significance of the date is on the ring in question in this trial?
No, but apparently it's the date that Lewis had the ring made.
Do you think, having seen the trial when you were a witness, you've been in the witness room most of the time, has it been handled justly and fairly from your standpoint?
Speaking for the time that I was on the stand, I think the trial was handled very well and fairly.
Mrs. Bradley, how long do you plan to be in Sumner?
I would like to remain here until after the verdict has been rendered.
Do you expect a quick verdict?
Oh, well, that seems to be the question on everybody's mind. It's just impossible to tell whether it will be quick or whether it will last for a day or so.
The jury has just come back and has returned a verdict of not guilty. Thus, the defendants, Milam and Bryant, are free men in this community of Sumner, Mississippi.
How do you folks feel now that it's all over? Roy, how about you?
I'm just glad it's over with.
J.W.?
I am too.
Mrs. Bryant, how about you, Mrs. Milam? Did you expect this verdict?
Well, I was hoping for it.
Roy, how about you?
I was hoping for the same.
You feel like you've been under a strain for a while and a little relief now?
Yeah, it's just rather confining.
What happens next for you folks? What's on the docket? What's in your future now?
I haven't decided yet. I don't know yet.
Roy, you open your store again?
I don't know.
The store has been closed, has it not, for a while? Anything else you'd like to say? Eyes of a lot of people have been on you for the last few days, and now you're free of this murder charge.
Well, all I can say is thanks to the wonderful people.
Mrs. Milam, you glad it's over? How about your kids? They've been under a little strain?
Yes, much so.
Go back and see your boys tonight?
Well, I don't know so yet.
There is a kidnapping charge that has to be taken care of. Is that right?
Yes.
There's a question of bond in that regard, or there's no indictment yet in LaFleur County, is there?
I don't know.
What's that little about the trial?
J.W. and Roy, do you feel that the trial was handled fairly for all concerned?
Yes, I do.
What about the fairness of the trial on both sides? What is your comment on that?
I don't think you could find a judge that would do a better job than Judge Swingle for either side.
Roy, do you feel the trial was well handled?
Yes.
I started to say that on the day that the verdict came down in the Emmett Till case, our members and our leaders, like millions of Americans, were shocked and revolted by the fact that the state of Mississippi had seen fit to take two murderers and elevate them to the level of heroes for their fine deeds for the civilization of the South. Since that time, there have been a number of meetings, fine meetings in New York, Chicago, and Detroit, and elsewhere, but they had one thing in common. All of them were meetings in Negro communities and largely meetings of Negro workers. That suggested that the problems raised by the Till case were primarily Negro problems. And it was the judgment of our members that that is very far from the truth. I would like to quote to you it might also be asked, isn't this just agitation? Aren't we here to agitate for agitation's sake? In answering that question, I would like to impose upon you to relate a conversation with a very dear friend of mine, who, when I told him about the rally that you were planning to hold, expressed the view that it would do more harm than good, he said. He went on to point out that it would, and he's a fine fellow, don't misunderstand me, he went on to say that he thought it would arouse the people of Mississippi against outsiders that were causing trouble and make it worse for the Negro people in Mississippi. I answered him in this way. In the first place, it may very well be that there are some people in Mississippi who won't like this meeting. I hope so. But on the other hand, they are a minority. And the majority of the people of Mississippi, who are regrettably in the category of victims of crime, we must think of them first and not of the bigots and the prejudiced people who won't like this meeting. Isn't it odd to suggest that a murderer Murray Kempton, when he wrote up the trial, talked about the ignorant backwoodsmen who made up the jury. And he said they had diseased minds, and I don't suppose we can cure them for a century. But there's some pretty good minds in Mississippi. They know what they're doing. They're not diseased, and they're not backward. They're pretty clever people. They run the state. And they're businessmen. And one of the objectives of this rally is to get across the notion to the businessmen of Mississippi that the people of these United States don't like what's going on. If we can't have good relations with Mississippi as a fellow state, maybe we can at least establish foreign relations with them. And in foreign relations, trade plays a big part. And maybe we can get across the notion that if Mississippi continues to be a help, and finally, in the nature of constructive purpose for this meeting, is the fact secure a just verdict. Went into a courtroom that had been set up for acquittal. They played with their children, sat with their wives. There wasn't a handcuff in sight, and neither did a deputy sheriff stand close by with a gun. They were on a family picnic, a holiday, with the consent, approval, and cooperation of the officials who are supposed to dispense justice in the state of Mississippi. The prosecutor announced in advance that he did not intend to ask for a death verdict. In effect, he was saying that he did not believe these men were guilty of the horrible and brutal murder in such a manner that would require the sentence of death. This was announced to the world, to the public, and to the prospective jurors. The jury that was supposed to render this verdict contained not a single member of the race of the boy who had been killed, despite the fact that 19,000 of them lived in Tallahatchie County, and of those 19,000, not a single one was permitted to be called on the jury panel, because in order to be a juror, you have to be a registered voter. And not a single one of the 19,000 in all the history of Tallahatchie County, since it was a county, had been permitted to register and vote. Here we have a trial in which 19,000 people in the county, a majority of the population, are defenseless and at the mercy of the prosecutors, the judges, particularly the sheriff, and their fate is in the hands at all times of a jury on whose panel they cannot serve. This, my friends, is a picture of the atmosphere in which the accused men in the murder of Emmett Till received a so-called trial. I repeat that it was a travesty. The Attorney General of the United States can find and act upon in the state of Mississippi, not across the seas in Germany and not across the seas in Asia, but right here at home. And while you're asking that the team that is in power in Washington do something about it, county and city and town and hamlet, no, we shall not forget the Till case. You're here today as evidence that you haven't forgotten it. And as far as District 65, I'm sure, is concerned, we will continue to battle this thing until every man, woman, and child in the United States, regardless of his race or his color, his religion, or where he came from, when he goes before a court of justice, will get justice. Thank you, Roy Wilkins, and Roy set a marvelous example of brevity. All of us, I'm quite sure, believe that there is a God, and that God made all of us, in spite of some of these external, accidental things we call color and size and the rest. He made all of them. This is his own revelation, shared by all of us, to his very image and likeness.
So just as a member of the human race, we're fighting in our own cause when we're fighting for a brother, because he's of the same family under God. And isn't that even more true and more significant for us here in America? Oh, you've thought of it at times. What a wonderful opportunity that this land has, beyond any other, to show its...
Mr. Chairman, fellow Americans, I begin with the premise that those whom God has created equal, no man has a right to condemn to inequality. I start with the premise that whatever threatens one race or one religious group is a threat to all of us. The Till case in Mississippi is only the latest of a series of tragic events which point to the fact that in the state of Mississippi it is impossible to obtain a fair trial where members of the Negro race are involved. It is impossible to get a jury to listen with open minds. The jury system is one of the principal bulwarks of democracy. But the jury system can be only as good as the atmosphere in which it operates. The state of Mississippi has made it clear that it does not intend to let the jury system operate fairly as between Negro and white. And therefore we, Americans, have a right to utter our condemnation because this is a larger problem than the state of Mississippi. This is a problem of a section of our country where in more than one state the atmosphere is polluted to a point where decisions of the Supreme Court of the United States ordering desegregation in the public schools are openly defied. In that kind of atmosphere, judicial systems are bound to be tainted. But I want to say to you, my friends, that ours is not a hopeless fight, because there have been some measures of progress in the past number of years. At least a grand jury did indict the two murderers.
Fellow Americans, believers in a free world, I rise to give a witness here this afternoon with you, congratulate Local 65 for spearheading this meeting, to congratulate the various men who have preceded me, but above all to congratulate you, the people of New York, who have given up of your lunch hour today to come here. As I look over this vast
the leadership of the United States has definitely suffered in Africa and in Europe because of what happened in Mississippi. And our nation is going to continue to slide downhill unless we, the people, do something to bring back to its sensibilities and its sense of right and its sense of justice the United States of America. I first want to warn you not to let any other organization use the Emmett Till case to exploit their own purposes. Support the NAACP and only the NAACP. We don't want any organization, new or old,
wing or right wing,
Do you think...
excuse for a session of Congress, let me go. In a conference last week with a representative of the White House and Clarence Mitchell, who worked so hard in Washington, can testify because he was in my office, I was told whenever I write the White House, now or in the future, I cannot address my letters to Mr. Eisenhower. I must address 2 sets of original letters. One must go to Sherman Adams and another one to Mr. Nixon. I don't see how any government can continue to meet the crises which are arising with dual, divided leadership in the White House. We are faced today with many, many crises, and we need a president in the White House, if only temporarily, to act as only a chief executive can act. Arms are going to Egypt. Morocco's in an uproar. These are crises which Walter Lippmann pointed out the other day that must be met. But I tell you, I believe next that a delegation should go and... I believe in the next place that we should think seriously of a national boycott of everything made in Mississippi. During the war, we boycotted things made in Hitler's Germany. We boycotted things made in fascist Japan. It's just as despicable fascism in Mississippi as it is in Germany or in Japan. I pledge myself that if such a list of products can be drawn up to put in the conventional. The Constitution says a congressman must represent 350,000 people. But when 1/2 of Mississippi is not allowed to vote, then they shouldn't have congressmen representing them. I want to say to you that behind these 3 lynchings in Mississippi this year stands the good white people of the state. Don't for 1 minute think this is the cheap, backwood, red clay, peckerwood. This is the bankers. This is the industrialists. These are the men of high position who are in back of these murders. This is the time, my friends, not to get mad. This is the time to be calm, use your mind, use your heart, use your pocketbook. This is the time for us to stand together. We should go over to Brooklyn right now. Let Congressman Emanuel Teller, chairman of the Judiciary Committee, tell him that we, the American people of New York, want anti-lynching bills first on the agenda when his committee meets in January of next year. I have just received a letter, not a letter of communication,